Hi there, today I'm going to show you how to make these beaded bow earrings for the holidays. In this example here, I used my vintage Christmas Miyuki 11.0 bead mix, but these would also look great in solid colors, and I have some other mixes. Here's my pink Christmas mix, which I think would work great with bows. And today in this tutorial, I'm actually going to work with this bead mix, which is called my Modern Christmas bead mix. So these are Miyuki 11.0 seed beads. You're also going to need some ear wires. That's going to attach the bows so that you can put them into your ears. And the center of the bow, I'm using 4mm glass pearl beads. So you can use other beads if you don't have those. I think the 4mm size works great with the 11.0 seed beads. Now I'm going to attach the bow to the ear wire using what's called a wire guard or thread guard. So in my shop I sell these and I call them thread guards because I mostly use them with thread as opposed to beading wire. You're also going to need some beading thread. And for this tutorial, I really like to use FireLine, the 6-pound crystal. I think the FireLine or monofilament thread, which is kind of like fishing line, gives a little more structure to the bow than if you were just using nylon beading thread. You'll also need a beading needle, some scissors, and pliers to attach your ear wires to the bows. Now there's probably many ways you can make beaded bows, so I'm going to show you one way. And the first thing I do is I like to attach my wire guard or thread guard to my pearl bead. I think it's easier to do it before you have all the other components of the bow in place. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut an arm span length of thread and thread my needle. And I'm going to thread the pearl bead. And on the other end, the opposite end of my needle, I'm going to leave about a 6 to 8 inch tail because I'm going to need that to thread back through to secure it. So for now, while I do this, I'm going to put what's called a bead stopper on here just to prevent the pearl bead from kind of sliding off while I'm working on it. If you don't have a bead stopper, you can use a piece of tape or a paper clip, anything that's going to hold the bead or prevent the bead from sliding off. So then I'm going to take the wire guard here and I'm going to put my needle through. There's, if you can see, it's kind of like a horseshoe shape and there's these holes here. So I'm going to go through one hole, one side. And then I'm going to pull that through. And go back down the other side of it. Kind of put my finger on it to hold it in place. Oops, got stuck on the tray of beads over here on the side. So I'm going to pull that down like so. Now you're going to go through the hole that the tail end is coming out. And pull that through. Okay, so now it kind of looks like this. And I'm going to go back around one more time. So I'm going to go, oops, back up through the thread, the hole in the wire guard or thread guard here, like that. I'm going to pull through. And I'm going to go back down. Oops. See, back down through there, like that. Okay. I'm going to pull that. Make sure that this thread is going into the channel here of the thread guard. And then I'm going to go, oops, back through the hole again, like so. Okay. And I'm going to pull. And I'm going to pull that really tight. Okay. And so what I want is I want the thread guard or wire guard here to kind of be on top of the bead and the thread coming out on the sides. So the wire guard is on top. So you might want to adjust it a little and then pull tight. And the two threads, this is my tail end, and then this will be my working end here on this end here. So you see what that looks like? That's what it should look like when you're done. Now at the end you can put a little glue if you'd like to secure that so it doesn't slide. That's up to you. I would use either GS Hypo Cement or some gel super glue. So I took off my bead stopper and now I'm ready to add my beads to make my bow. So I'm gonna spread out my beads on my beading mat. I think using a beading mat is really the easiest way to work with these small seed beads. And let's see, the first step I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make this loop here. Okay, so I'm gonna pick up 20 beads and I've done them randomly, so I'm not doing any color pattern. So I'm just gonna pick up 20 beads randomly. So I have 20 beads on my needle and I'm gonna thread those down to meet my pearl, like so. So then the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna thread the needle back through the pearl to the other side. So you can see it's going back through to the other side, and then I'm gonna pull, and that'll create the first part of the bow. Okay, so now we're gonna make the other side of the bow here. So I'm gonna pick up another 20 beads. Okay, so I have 20 beads, and I'm gonna thread those down to meet the pearl, like so. And then I'm gonna once again, go through the pearl to the other side. So you can see, and I'm gonna pull. So I'm gonna kind of hold that pearl, and then we have two sides to the bow. So this is what it looks like now. Okay. So now what I'm gonna do is make the two hanging portions of the bow here. Okay, so for these I use 25 beads. So I'm gonna pick up 25. So I have 25 beads, and I'm gonna thread those down. Now I'm gonna go back up with my needle, but I'm gonna skip this first bead here. I'm not gonna put the needle back through this one, and that'll hold it so that the beads don't just fall off the thread. So I'm going to start going up this bead, and I'm going to carefully make sure I go through every bead and I don't skip any. Okay, so you see I've gone up all of the beads and I've skipped that first one. And then I'm gonna kind of hold this down and pull. Oops. Okay, so now we have that portion of the bow completed. And then I'm going to thread my needle back through the pearl to the other side. You can see going through like that. And pull that through so that I can make the other hanging side. So I'm going to do that this side the exact same way I did this side. So I'm going to pick up 25 beads and I'm going to thread those down to meet the pearl in the center, like so. And I'm going to skip this first bead right here, and I'm going to thread my needle back up through all of these beads, making sure not to skip any. And so now I'm coming out the top here, and I'm going to just kind of hold it down and pull. And you might want to, the thread might bunch up here, so if you hold this here and you pull, it'll tighten all the thread. So there you have your bow. Now the next step is really just kind of securing the thread and tying some knots, and that's it. So the first thing, what I do is I'm going to go back through this pearl bead, and then I'm going to thread my thread around this loop one more time. I like that it then gives a little more security and kind of shape. And then I'm going to thread down this hanging portion here, and I'm going to tie a couple knots along the way and then cut my excess thread, and then repeat that process on the other side. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go through this pearl bead, and it's already going through some of the beads on this loop, which is fine because I want to take my thread all the way around that loop again. Okay. So I went through this pearl, and then it came out through a couple of these beads, and I'm going to thread all the way around and then down here. So I'm going to pull through. And then I'm gonna go back through the pearl. And pull that tight. Okay. And then I'm gonna go so my tail thread's here, so you just want to make sure you don't get that tangled with your working thread. So I'm gonna just kind of move my tail thread out of the way. And then I'm gonna go down a handful of beads, doesn't need to be exact, and come out or pull like so. Okay. So what I'm gonna do now is, I do kind of give a good tug to make it all secure, and I want to create a knot here. Okay, so in order for the knot to be most effective, it needs to wrap around the thread that's already going down into the center of the beads here. So what I do is I kind of put my needle behind the two beads like that, in between two beads, and I hold it. So the needle's like that, and then I'm gonna hold it down and pull. And then creates like a loop here. And I'm gonna put my needle through that loop. And I'm gonna pull. And that's gonna create a knot. And the knot is wrapped around the thread that's going down the center of these beads. So it's really important that you catch that thread, otherwise you're not really tying a knot to anything. Okay. So then I'm gonna go down. Oops. So I've tied one knot. I'm gonna go down another handful of beads. Oops. Sometimes it's easier to kind of put your work down. So I'm going through another handful of beads here. Doesn't have to be exact. So I'm going to come out here, and I'm going to do the same thing by creating another knot. Okay, so I'm going to put my needle between these two beads here, and I'm going to put my finger over it to hold it down, create that loop here, and put my needle through, and pull. Okay, so then I have a knot there. Okay, and then I'm going to go down another handful of beads. Like so. And I'm going to pull that. Now you could do another knot if you want. I usually stick to 2. And so I'm going to cut my excess thread right there. Okay, so now we need to do kind of the same thing using the tail thread. Okay, so I've gone through this side, and then I've come down here and tied some knots with my working thread. Now with my tail thread on this side here, I'm going to go around this side and then down and tie some knots into here. So go ahead and put your needle on your tail end of the thread. Okay, so I'm going to start going all the way around, getting through as many as I can at a time. Just working my way around. Okay, so I've gotten all the way around. You can see. So now I'm going to go through my pearl, like so. Okay, and then I'm going to go down this side and tie 2 knots and then cut my excess thread. So go through a handful of beads. Doesn't matter how many. Pull that through. Okay, and then I'm gonna tie a knot here. So I'm gonna put my needle behind and in between these 2 beads here, and I'm gonna pull that till it makes a loop here, and I'm gonna put my needle through that loop and pull. Okay, so let's do one more knot. Go down a handful of beads. My needle kind of got a little bent. Pull that. Okay. And one more knot. So I'm going to put my needle behind and in between these 2. And I'm going to then get a loop right here. Put my needle through the loop and pull. And do tighten it. Give a good tug there. So then I'm just going to put my thread through another handful of beads. Pull that. And then I'm going to cut my excess thread. And there you have your bow. I like to give it a little adjustment, make sure everything lays nicely. And then the last thing you need to do is attach an ear wire and make another one. So one thing before I attach the ear wire is I look to see which side looks best that I want to use as my front. Sometimes I'll move the hanging pieces, kind of push them to the back, like a back side, and put the loops in the front. And then I'll use the loops that are forward as my front. So that's just a personal preference. So I would just use whatever side looks best to you. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks so much.